What's happening? It's your boy, the Aspen Loot Mad Lad, Jack Slack, Fights Gone By Podcast, episode 151. Don't know if we can even count this as a proper episode. I'm just popping in to give you a quick 20-30 minute roundup of the shit that's going on this weekend, because I'm not even sure you care. It's not it's a weird fight we got going on, or you know, weird night of fights. So I won't do any news or anything. I was looking into the news of Zhu Jiangdong, the Chinese MMA guy who beats up Kung Fu masters and has since had his social credit rating lowered to D-, which means he can't fly, can't take high-speed trains, can't rent hotel rooms. It's super weird and creepy, but I think I'll probably do like a video essay on it at some point on the YouTube channel. There's other bits of interesting news, like you got Kron Gracie versus Cub Swanson just been booked. That's a fun one because, Swanson's decent on the ground. Well, good on the ground. Yeah, well, he's hit and miss on the ground. Sometimes he just leaves himself wide open for no reason. But he's slick enough on the ground. He's good at stopping a takedown generally, unless you're, a monstrous takedown artist like Ricardo Lamas. And he's got heavy hands. And that's, always going to be a problem that is, always going to be looked at as a problem for Kron Gracie. Though his boxing is surprisingly good for a Gracie. But anyway, what have we got going on this weekend? Let's start at the top. Let's do the UFC one. We've got some weird-ass names. We're going, what is it, San Diego? Sacramento? Yeah, Sacramento. We're in Sacramento, California, which is obviously why Uriah Faber is propping up this card. They got 4 faces on the poster, and almost everyone who has watched MMA, not religiously, will only recognise one of them. So on this fight, you got Uriah Faber versus Ricky Simone, which is the co-main event. I think we're Ricky Simone rather than Ricky Simon, but Ricky Simone, just terrible hair. I don't know why MMA is bringing back the rat tail, but it was never a good look. The rat-tailed knacker, and Ricky Simone doesn't pull it off at all. Now, Ricky Simone is super interesting because, a lot of people are treating this as like a foregone conclusion that Ricky Simone's going to beat up Uriah Faber. I think Ricky Simone's one of the best ranked opponents they could pick who Uriah Faber could beat. Because, Faber was all overhand right, double leg, slick back takes, good guillotine. And that was about it. He didn't really have any striking beyond that. He used to hang out with Master Tong, whatever. They'd always be showing clips of them working their Muay Thai, never translated into their fights in any way. Dwayne Ludwig changed a lot of careers when he went to that camp and actually started teaching them to strike. But Ricky Simone is interesting, is what I'll say. He has elements that make me think, wow, this guy could be really good. And then elements that you go, well, here's why he's not really good yet. Firstly, he is often a sucker for the right hand, especially in the early going. Once he gets the timing of his opponent, or they slow down a bit to, match up with the timing that he's already set, he can start doing these nice slips under the right hand. He was doing it against Rani Yahya, against that Russian guy whose name I can't even say, Davalishi or something. But Yahya hit him in the face, square in the face with the right hand, straight off the bat in their fight, and then did it again in the first round. It was only by the second, third round that Simone was just, absolutely styling on him with the slips. But then that's the thing, you can't style on someone with slips in that you can't win a fight on defense. And that's what Ricky Simone was doing in that fight. He was slipping these right hands, pivoting out behind Yahya into an amazing position, and then not doing anything. Not like throwing and missing, just not doing anything. So that was super weird. But generally that Yahya performance was pretty awesome, and I remember saying it was pretty cool at the time. That was the one where Yahya hurt him, I think it was in the second round actually, hurt him again. And Simone backed up, dropped his shoulder, and then slammed it into Yahya's face and put him on his arse. That was very cool. But he was doing that throughout, not slamming his shoulder into his face, but he was hitting these reactionary takedowns that were super nice. He'd take a step back, drop, hit him in the stomach with his shoulder, and then just catch behind the knees. Which, sometimes you'll hear it called like a Japanese double, but in judo that's called a murotigari, which is double, 2 hands reap. So you're not like turning the corner or doing a beautiful double leg. You're just hitting them in the stomach and pulling their knees forward. And he was doing that and taking down Yahya very easily. And it's a great way to make that level change without any extra effort at all. You don't have to put your knee to the mat, don't have to do anything that would be like technically good wrestling. You've turned a boxing level change into a takedown attempt or a reactionary takedown. Reactive takedown? Reactionary takedown? He was super racist while he was doing it. The other thing that I really liked about that performance, well, there was a couple of things actually. One of them was that he when he wanted to work in Yaya's guard, Yaya was ready to kick him in the face. So he kept going with one knee on the mat. And it just reminded me of Rich Franklin's advice to Matt Serra on The Ultimate Fighter. He was like, you're already a foot shorter than everyone you're going to fight. So why don't you just come out and take a knee? And Matt Serra's like, are you nuts? I'm already going to lose the striking on range. Why would I immediately put myself on a knee? One of Rich Franklin's lesser moments. Up there with signing on to ONE FC. Chatry's going on Joe Rogan. Look forward to that. Look forward to Joe, who I love, giving him absolutely no pushback on any of the bollocks he says. Joe, reach out to me. I will prepare you for that interview if you want. But anyway, back to Ricky Simone. The thing that I loved about that performance was that there were shades of Gomi in the Pride Lightweight Grand Prix in that fight, because he doesn't really jab anyway, but he wasn't shooting straight shots or anything like that. He wasn't shooting for Yaya's head. He was throwing almost exclusively uppercuts and body shots. And those are the kind of punches where you're kind of exposing yourself to, straight punches down the pipe. But if they move in to clinch or duck in on your hips, your arm is already in as an underhook. And it's not going to be like pressed against your body, which isn't a great underhook, but it's going to be out there so that you can just drop your hips back and create some space. And that was Gomi against Kawajiri, Alvarez in that Grand Prix. He just goes forward, banging the body, and he was using a right uppercut to the solar plexus as the chest. But it really only works when the opponent ducks forward to come in on your hips. Simone went to that too. Like in the second round, he missed a big uppercut to the head as Yaya came for his hips, and he decided, okay, fuck that, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to uppercut the body now, and he went for it. Uppercut to the sternum / solar plexus. Uppercut to the solar plexus underused in boxing even. If you watch the second Maidana-Mayweather fight, he uses the shoulder roll, and instead of coming back with the right straight to the head, he goes right uppercut to the solar plexus, and Maidana was completely surprised by it, and it really slowed him down. But right uppercut to the chest as the opponent level changes, love it. That's something you never see in MMA. Gomi was doing it back in the day. It's money. Especially if you hit as hard as Gomi, you don't even need to hit like the solar plexus or anything good. You could probably hit him in the nipple and turn it inside out and cause them all kinds of problems that way. If you're Gomi, that is. But yeah, really promising performance from Ricky Simone. However, like I said, doesn't do anything with these opportunities he creates off the slip, doesn't have a jab, fights very square on, takes right hands quite a lot. And if you watch the fights with Montel Griffin and Davalishi Svengali, whatever his name was, he gets beat up in those fights. The Montel Griffin one, he's giving up like a foot of height and a foot of reach, basically. But he just keeps going like short right straight to the double leg attempt, like Mads Bennell, but not succeeding. So not at all like Mads Bennell. And the Dvalishvili whatever fight, he just got beat up throughout that. And then that was the same, actually. He got dropped with the right hand early on, and that was because he was trying to duck under a right hand and ate a right uppercut on the way. And that's like Uriah Faber's one setup on the feet. Throw the overhand. When they're ducking, throw the uppercut. That's how he knocked out Brian Bowles. So yeah, I think this is a winnable one for Uriah. We never know what shape these guys are coming back in, but Uriah, for a very long time, with a very short list of things he actually did, was still just obliterating number one contenders, even. We can keep laughing about them putting him into title fight after title fight that he didn't deserve, but he was beating top guys, which is a real shame. Well, not a shame, but it really showed you that he had a skill set that just kept him relevant for ages. What I'm really saying is, they're going to slide him into a title shot right after this. Look out. What else we got? Okay, as I said on Twitter, I'm going to shock you. Can I just shock you? I like Aspen Ladd. I do. I think it's because so many of the tropes of women's MMA are not in her performances. I mean, her striking's not great, which is a trope of women's MMA, but, going for the head and arm every 10 seconds. She doesn't do it. It's great. If you watch the fight with Lena Landsberg or Sijara Eubanks or stuff like that, when her opponent has underhooks and has pushed her against the fence, she doesn't attempt to head and arm them, which is what every other woman in the world seems to do, and then either you fall down into a headlock and have this awful grappling exchange on the mat where one person's trying to take the back and one person's trying to stay on top, or you give up your back altogether. Ladd doesn't actually do that. She actually improves her position and then hits a more powerful, successful most of the time takedown. It's like women's MMA, they just use the hip throw as I don't even need to pummel for position or set up shots or anything like that. The other thing is, bad as her striking is, she's pretty game with it. You know, she goes out and she basically just tries to parry the opponent's jab and come back with a hard jab or a hard left hook or a hard left kick. Doesn't really throw her right hand much at all. Not good at getting out of the way. So like Sijara Eubanks would get hit on the first punch, throw 3 back and land all of them. So you know, Ladd would beat her to the punch and then lose the exchange consistently. But she does, you know, the one against Landsberg, she lost the first round, came out, her corner had been like desperately convincing her to get the takedown, and rather than go out and just dive after Landsberg's hips as she would expect, she went out and tried to punch Landsberg in the face. She just got in her face and jabbed her like 8 times in the opening 10 seconds. And then as soon as Landsberg loaded up and threw back, she dropped down, knee to the mat, straight between Landsberg's feet, turned the corner, completed a picture-perfect double, got on top, smashed her. And that's where Aspen Ladd's actually really entertaining. Firstly, she can hit with some venom, but really interesting top player, good guard passes, things like that, good scrambles, but actually goes after people and finishes them on the mat. And she's also hit on this thing where if you scream as you're hitting people, the ref will stop it. It's like Mark Hunt walking away from people who he's knocked down. Some of those people could have continued. You know, like they weren't all like dead. Some of them would have scrambled back to guard, and Mark Hunt's not good at dealing with guard. And punching people past guard is quite hard if they're decent. So Aspen Ladd screams while she's throwing these shots, and the refs seem convinced that they're worse than they are. But what Aspen Ladd does quite a lot is she flattens people out on their front when she's on back control, which is something you hear like Henry Akins did an article about and things like that. You know, there's having the back and then there's having the back. If you've got someone's back, but they're on top of you and like bridging up into you, and you don't have gravity on your side at all, that's a purely technical position where you're trying to take out one arm and move for the choke. If you have someone flattened out and you're on their back and you've like put their arms underneath their chest to flatten them out, you can just murder them with strikes from the top. And she does that. She like flattens people out on their front, and then she pushes their head into the mat so that their head is, you know, they have to pick one side or the other to turn their head. And then she starts elbowing it into the mat as hard as possible. Very cool. Like her a lot. Shaymin Randamie, no one likes because of her performances and her bizarre title reign where she just, like, I don't like accusing people of ducking people, but she actually did just openly duck Cyborg. She's like, actually, I don't want to be champ anymore, just take the belt. But, you know, it's a weird one because she's a very good striker, like, especially in women's MMA, but I think she could have given Cyborg all kinds of problems. If you watch the fight with Holly Holm, well, Holly Holm's thing is that she's terrible at making distance while striking, despite walking with all her punches, so it never makes any sense. But like, if you drop away, she'll run onto counters, and that's what Shaymin Randamie did in their fight. Randamie, very good from the clinch if she gets like that Thai style head post, you know, get the head underneath the opponents, throw the hips back and just pound in knees. And the thing that about this fight is that Landsberg did that to Ladd, and Ladd couldn't really deal with it. That was the first round. She just ate knees to the midsection with her opponent in the head post. So decent enough fight. I mean, people are laughing at it as the main event, and I think fair enough. But a good fight nonetheless. Josh Emmett versus Mirsad Bektic. I didn't even write anything about this. I mean, I wrote a couple of the matchups up for the Patreon boys in the quick Patreon boy preview. So I wrote up Ladd versus Randamie, Faber versus Simone, and then of course Elkins versus Hall. But I didn't even look at this one. Josh Emmett versus Mirsad Bektic. Good fight. Josh Emmett coming off that weird performance against Michael Johnson, where like he does all this TJ Dillashaw stuff where he's bouncing all over the place, but then only ever comes in with the 1-2. There's no clever techniques hidden in there. It's just movement and 1-2s, and not in like the cool Sugar Ray Leonard style either. Just weird. But he finally caught Johnson in the was it the third round, the last round, yeah, with like 40 seconds to go too. So yeah, you know. And before that, he had that Jeremy Stevens fight where he managed to use movement against Jeremy Stevens in a way that was completely ineffective, which was so weird because Jeremy Stevens is like, that's his Achilles heel, that's his kryptonite. You move, and he has no idea what he's doing. And he gets really frustrated. But somehow, Josh Emmett managed to use tons of movement and achieve nothing in that fight. Very strange. And then, of course, Mirsad Bektic, well, the young Fedor. That's what we were all calling him, like, the next Fedor, because he just smashes people on the ground. Had that run-in with Darren Elkins where he got tired hitting Darren Elkins in the face and then got head kicked. But since then, he rebounded, fought Gianfride Pepe, which is a little bit of a gimme at that point. And then Ricardo Lamas, who is very stiff competition. Only got the split decision against Lamas because Lamas had some really slick transitions in that fight. But I think he's in a place. I mean, he starched. Well, didn't starch Pepe. He knocked him out with a body punch. But we're in a place where he's still scary, but because he has that loss and then the slower fight against Ricardo Lamas, people are a bit less like, oh my god, this guy's the next Fedor. He's unstoppable. Still very much one to watch. I mean, Josh Emmett stops a decent takedown. I wouldn't say Mirsad Bektic is particularly slick on the feet. He's more powerful, like he is on the ground. But I think you've got a really interesting matchup there. Whether the movement actually matters or just tires Josh Emmett out and then he gets taken down and pounded. So yeah, good 3-rounder there. Then you're into just, I have no idea. Carl Roberson, is it Roberson? Versus Wellington Turman. Wellington Turman, UFC debut. No idea what to tell you because I haven't YouTubed him. Then you got Cesar Ferreira. Is that Mutante? Is he Mutante? I forget the nicknames. Yeah, no, he's Mutante. He was really hot shit for a little while. But he does have like a knockout loss to Jorge Masvidal at middleweight, you know, and he's a huge middleweight, Cesar Ferreira. But he did choke out Jack Hermansson a couple of years ago, which is always good on your record. Lost to Elias Theodorou, Mr. Spoiler himself. And then, yeah, not really done much since then. He beat Nate Marquardt, who's ancient and only by split decision, Carl Roberson, who is above him on the card, and then he lost to Ian Heinisch, who is the most interesting man in MMA right now. Mainly for his life story, but also just turning up against Shoeface and Granbying through jiu-jitsu. Just being like, nah, it doesn't matter, I've got Granby, mate. But he's fighting Marvin Vettori, who's back after his USADA suspension, and shitting the bed against Israel Adesanya, though that fight was pretty slow on both ends. Vettori's a weird one because I looked into him before the Adesanya fight because Adesanya was already taken off. I was already hot on Adesanya. I was like, okay, cool, let's look into his next opponent. And really, like, billed as an amazing kickboxer, but just like a strong rear leg and some decent power, but really not clever in his striking. At least he might be a brilliant mathematician outside the cage, but I'm just saying his striking is not like full of setups and trickery like Israel Adesanya's. Then you got Mike Rodriguez versus John Allen. Okay, fair enough. Andre Fili versus Shaymin Moraes. Now that's an interesting fight because Fili, while he's had a couple of struggles on the feet, I do consistently see improvement in him. He's got some clever boxing, does some nice little shifts, cheap punches, things like that. Shaymin Moraes, obviously, main thing being amazing on the ground. Who was the guy who just beat him up in his last fight? That was Sadiq Youssef. Oh fuck, no, I'm thinking of the other Moraes. Thinking of it. Oh no, yeah. Julio Arce got anacondaed by his abbot. Yeah, I remember this Moraes now. So yeah, I won't give you too many confident predictions on that fight because I wasn't even sure who I was talking about until I checked his record. Then Juliana Peña's back after, I don't know, why'd she disappear? Kicked some guy in the dick in a bar? Oh no, she lost that fight to Shevchenko. Very embarrassing, understandably, being the only person that Shevchenko had finished in the UFC at that point. Confirmed for scrub, is what I'm saying. And she's fighting Nico Montano, who also is in an embarrassing position of being booked to fight Valentina Shevchenko and not being able to make weight in that division that they invented for Valentina Shevchenko. And then Darren Elkins versus Ryan Hall. I think that's basically the last interesting thing on this card. Yeah, I did a Filthy Casuals guide to Ryan Hall. Click on the YouTube channel, have a look at it. Obviously unmonetized. All my stuff on YouTube's unmonetized. I do it for fun. But he's got an interesting style, so I thought it was interesting to look at. And also just a pioneer of the 50-50 position. And the 50-50 position really went out of vogue for a little while. People preferred the saddle. And the reason for that, well, one of the reasons for that, is that the 50-50 is literally a mirrored position. I can't think of that many mirrored positions on the ground where you're both in the same position, aside from like a double guard pull. But you are in an identical position with your opponent. So you can sweep him from bottom position into the 50-50, and I suppose that's like a positional improvement on the hierarchy. But you can also enter it from the top. You can just go into like a foot lock or a straight ankle lock or something like that, and then move into the 50-50. And I suppose that would be considered like a positional retreat, but it's not really. So it doesn't really fit in with the whole thing of jiu-jitsu anyway. But it's a very good position. The problem is like the heel hook is it from there. Like that's everything you have to be worried about. You can hit like weird footlocks on the far leg, but nothing is as strong as that inside heel hook. Contrast that with the saddle. Again, not really something you can hit multiple attacks from, but the inside heel hook is like the go-to. Ignoring things like the Texas Cloverleaf and shit like that just are gimmicky subs more than anything. The entire point of both positions is that the inside heel hook is probably the submission that not only is it debilitating if you complete it, but it's one that grapplers take very seriously. You can armbar someone, break their arm, and like Jacare in his win over Roger Gracie, if you can stand up and just stall out the rest of the match on the feet, if you're ahead on points, you'll win. You can fight with a broken arm. Whereas this is the one where you might not be able to walk for several months, so guys take it very seriously. But anyway, the difference was that the saddle is you throw your outside leg over the opponent's leg and then triangle your legs on the inside. So it's not a mirrored position. You are very much attacking their leg. They can't get to one of yours very effectively. And also that your outside leg is creating distance between you and the opponent. So if you watch Danaher on Rogan, he talks about that and uses the clip of Cyborg getting submitted by Gordon Ryan. Cyborg comes up to like try and grab Gordon's hands and keep them off his leg, and that knee is in the way. He can't keep coming up and doing it. Whereas in the 50-50, if you get on your opponent's hands and don't let them go, they aren't going to submit you, typically. They have to do something clever and get your hands away or transition to something else. However, guys are now turning against the heel, pointing the toes, turning away, doing the running man from the saddle, which is not a move you can really do in the 50-50 because the opponent's inside knee blocks your turn. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both, as there are to every position. I'm sure Ryan Hall uses the saddle all the time, but the 50-50, he's so good at it, and guys were ignoring it for a very long time. And something that happened just before this fight was announced is like the Tex Johnson one. Felipe Pena has been famous for dealing with leg locks. He's good from the 50-50 himself, or great from the 50-50 himself. But Gordon Ryan has had him in the saddle twice in their fights, in their grappling matches. And that's death for everyone else. But Felipe Pena does the running man, turns away, creates space, turns back into Ryan, and both times has taken his back straight off this escape. Felipe Pena ends up in the 50-50 with Tex Johnson, who was kind of unregarded at the time at Kasai. Tex Johnson just he hand fights him, gets one hand on his hand, and he's got like a clever system of setups, which is no point me describing, but he goes for things like the straight arm lock, the straight foot lock with his cross arm through and things like that to get the opponent to grab his hands, and then he controls one of their hands and uses one hand to unhook the opponent's top foot and get the heel hook at the same time. Very clever stuff. Who did Zombie Proof BJJ? Fuck, I can't remember his name. Kent did a great little breakdown of that technique, which you can look up online. But yeah, Tex Johnson just destroyed Felipe Pena's knee with that move, and Felipe Pena was like considered almost unheel hookable. So anyway, part of what Ryan's had amazing success with is entering into the 50-50 and getting to the heel before the opponent's hands are, before they're facing him and being like, I'm in the 50-50 position now. If you watch the BJ Penn one, BJ Penn's hands are on the mat. He's like holding himself up from this shot, this upside down shot, while Ryan's already on his heel. And there's another one where the guy is like stacking up to put pressure on Ryan, like happened to Matt Wyman in his comeback match against Luis Pena, Violent Bob Ross. He got the 50-50 over and over again, but Bob Ross just set up into him and put pressure on him. And I think Sal Rogers did that to Ryan and sort of stalled him out there. But one of the guys that he fights on The Ultimate Fighter comes up into him. Ryan just swivels under him, pushes him over the top. The guy's hands go to the mat, and while his hands are on the mat, Ryan's like, I'm having that heel, and just gets into position to finish him. So very, very cool stuff. And as we talk about in the Filthy Casuals Guide, the kicking game is opening up opportunities for that. Not only can he kick with impunity, because he's not scared of being put on his back, kicking encourages people to grab his leg and, either try and run him down or kick out his standing leg. That's just your reaction when you catch a kick. And doing that gives him the chance to roll under and get their leg, like Marias did against Dodson, the 2 times that Dodson took him down off kicks. Meanwhile, Darren Elkins is just scrappy as fuck. We've already spoken about the Bektik fight where he just survived his way into a knockout over this unstoppable prospect. Awkward and tricky on the feet, but in an opposite way to Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall is very much like a distance striker, and since he's started adopting the sidekick, he's been doing a lot better at that. He was all about like step up front leg snap kick for a while, but the sidekick just plays into the whole game so much better. It opens up that hook kick and everything, and it's just a longer technique and one that you can add more power to, really. Especially if you're working with someone like Ray Thompson, Stephen Thompson's dad. I think it's Ray. Is it Ray? Correct me in the comments. But Elkins is much more like run you down sort of striking. So he uses a lot he'll like jab, right uppercut, step up left kick to the body. And you know me, I love the uppercut into body shots of any kind. And I love uppercuts into body kicks too. They're just beautiful. The wonderful thing about the uppercut is like, everyone treats it as like you physically lift someone's head up with the uppercut and then you turn it with the left hook and then you knock it off with the right straight. But that doesn't happen. What the uppercut can do, I mean it can happen, but what the uppercut does a lot is makes guys stand up straight, or even pull back. And what happens then is that their body is extended, and much like when you've got the head post on the fence, their body's as straight as it can be. You've got a good chance of hurting them with a body shot, and you've got a bigger target than when they're crunched over. You know, if a guy's crunching over and prime target for the uppercut, not always a great target for the body shot. If he's standing up nice and tall so that the uppercut's pretty ineffectual, he's perfect for the body shots. So that's like the Darren Elkins running combination, and I love it. And it's start practicing it now, because it's not going to catch on because Darren Elkins is doing it and he's the only one. You know, no one's going to look at his strike and go, yeah, I need some of that in my life. But I'm telling you, that's a good combo. But what really interests me about this fight, and I talk more about this in our little Patreon boy preview, Elkins against Ricardo Lamas. Ricardo Lamas was able to threaten him a lot from the bottom, but he did that by being able to stand up and being a threat on the feet. You know, he'd been doing well against Elkins on the feet, so he's hitting these stand-ups, and he does this cool thing where he wraps the head like for a guillotine, but not actually threatening a guillotine, does a stand-up, and then he'll use sort of like a cross butterfly hook. So he only has one hook in, and it's on the opposite side, and he'll fall back and try and sweep them overhead, and then he'll switch between the guillotine, the stand-up, and the sweep. And he did it to Mirsad Bektik too. And that's literally the holy trinity that BJ Penn laid out years ago. You've got to be able to threaten the stand-up, you've got to be able to threaten the submissions, and you've got to be able to threaten the sweeps, and each will open up opportunities for the other. The thing about Ryan is that the thing about Ryan, if he's not winning in the stand-up in this fight, is that he only has the two, the sweep and the submission. It's not a threat to, like, especially if you pull guard like Ryan did against Lobov, you know. And when I say pull guard, I mean like actually pulling guard, not rolling into a leg entanglement. He does this thing where he shoots and he sits to either a butterfly guard or sits to a butterfly guard and goes to closed guard. But if you pull guard like that, which is a possibility against a wrestler like Elkins, there's not really much intimidation of you standing up, because you've already gone there by your choice because you thought that you were losing on the feet, or because you wanted to make something happen on the ground. And it really it's fascinating how these all play into, you know, the context of the fight dictates how the ground game can go, particularly from the guard. Because if you, he did well against Lobov from closed guard, but Sal Rogers stalled him out in closed guard quite a bit. You know, closed guard, and Ryan would be the first to tell you this himself, I'm sure. I've been religiously watching his instructionals like every week since he first started putting them out. But you know, he's the first to say that top position is much better. Don't believe the Gracie propaganda system. You know, you are at a disadvantage on the bottom, and I don't think that, you know, particularly that's true in like closed guard, because there's nothing keeping distance between you and the opponent. If they posture down, if they just want to lay on you, they probably can. You really have to work to create openings then, and that's the sort of thing that I'm thinking in this fight is going to be very interesting, because if Darren Elkins just gets him to closed guard and lays on him, as great as Ryan is on the ground, he's still, you know, it's an uphill battle to make openings against someone who doesn't want to engage from closed guard. And that was, you know, the story of how he ended up doing so much inverted guard stuff and using the inverted guard to set up the triangle, was that once he got famous for hitting the triangle, guys weren't going to engage him in the same way. They would just sort of like sit back on their heels and wait for him. So it's a fascinating fight. Can't wait for it to happen. For God's sake, I hope Ryan actually fights again soon after this fight. I mean, this one's a quicker turnaround that, you know, after the BJ Penn fight than the one against Gray Maynard. But the Gray Maynard one, there was always sort of that hint that he was being somehow punished for what was a very odd fight. I mean, I liked it. I know a lot of people liked it, but I know a lot of people hated it. And it isn't like the whether you like BJJ and karate kicks or not divide. It's just some people who love technical stuff were like, I hate that fight. And some people who love, you know, who just love a blood and guts brawl were like, oh my god, he trolled him so well. So it's weird, the divide on that fight, but certainly a unique one. Like that Cage Warriors fight between Dulby and, oh fuck, I can't remember the other man's name, which is really bad. Houston? Was it Houston, or was that the other fight? But the one that was called off due to blood. That's the only instance I've ever seen of that happening, and that's truly a unique fight. So this Ryan Hall Gray Maynard fight, I've got to start assembling it. Just weird ass fights you've got to watch. Anyway, I only wanted to rap for 20 minutes about this fight. Just basically, it's not this fight. Well, basically this fight, but just out of obligation to do this event, because I know some people will care, and also just to give you something to listen to if you enjoy listening to the podcast, even if you're like, God, these fights are shit. So yeah, that should be decent. And I will catch you on Monday. It's one of those cards where I think there'll be plenty of interesting stuff happening, and we'll be talking about it afterwards. But you're looking down the card and you're going, what is there to grab onto before this happens? No fight of nights is going. Fight of nights. No night of fights is going to go off without tons of interesting shit going on. But getting people in the door normally involves some name power, and they've really neglected it on this one. Anyway, I'm your boy Jack Slack. Sign up to the Patreon to support the podcast, to keep me doing them twice a week, and able to just keep talking shit on air. Actually, 2 pieces went out for the Patreon boys this week. We got the Cyril Garn Squidge hitting for the bigger gentleman up earlier this week, and then I just did a little preview of this event on the Patreon yesterday. So yeah, I'm just going to keep pumping stuff out, keep the Patreon boys happy, and letting them know that I love them. And if you want to send an email to the podcast, fightsgonbypodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to see what I'm writing at any time, fightprimer.com. And I will catch you next week. Darren Elkins' worst tattoo in the active UFC roster, bless.